So I'll be speaking tomorrow on the use of GLP-1 receptor analogs in managing type 1 diabetes. I think in type 1 space, we have spoke about insulin delivery systems for ages. Now I think it's a time to explore something beyond insulin, and that's what my talk is going to be. So there are a few points that I would like to highlight. Number one is that no matter how good the AID systems are becoming, not everyone is going to achieve a target of, let's say time in range of more than 70%, right? And there are many reasons for that. Number one is that the prevalence of overweight and obesity is increasing. That leads to insulin resistance. That means people will require more insulin. The current AID system can hold up to 200 or 300 units of insulin per reservoir. So people who are requiring really a lot of insulin, the AID may not be the optimal in those situations. AID does really good job in glycemia, but what about reducing weight in those individuals? So I think we need more than just the insulin delivery. And the cardiovascular outcomes. So if you look at people with type 1 diabetes and the cardiovascular outcomes, it has been published NEJM and other journals that people with type 1 diabetes has 6 to 8 fold higher risk of cardiovascular disease than people without diabetes. And it's higher than actually even type 2 diabetes. And so I think insulin does not address the cardiovascular risk reduction. And so I think adjunct therapies like GLP-1, SGLT2, or something else that will come up in the future is required along with the insulin, not just to optimize the glycemia, but to reduce the weight, to reduce the insulin resistance, and reduce the cardiovascular risk. So what we know so far is that the GLP-1 analogs in type 1 diabetes. So most of the studies are observational, single center in nature. So take that with grain of salt. We have a two good randomized control trial. One is published by us called AACE T1D trial that looked at the semaglutide in people with type 1 diabetes. I think the summary of all these different observational studies and clinical trials suggest that GLP-1 improves A1C, improves time in range, without increasing severe hypoglycemia or the DKA risk. So that's good. It improves weight, or you can say the reduction in the weight is significant and almost similar that we have seen in type 2 trials. Now it's not a head-to-head comparison, so again, I take that with grain of salt, but great weight loss. We do have now some studies looking at the surrogate cardiovascular and kidney outcomes in type 1 diabetes. Now, these are not the definite endpoints, but the surrogate endpoints. And the signal looks pretty good that I'll be talking tomorrow. So I think all these trials suggest and provides us a really good direction that this molecule is going to be really great as an adjunct in people with type 1 diabetes. But of course, we need a larger regulatory trials to make this approved in type 1 diabetes. And it's happening right now as we are speaking. So hopefully, I think that we may see that GLP-1 analogs approved in type 1 diabetes in future. Right. So, as you mentioned already, that the benefit has to be, weighted against the risk. And so, what we know so far is that the A1C reduction with the GLP-1 analogs, I'm talking mostly about the semaglutide studies and tirzepatide studies, are in the tune of about 0.4% to about 1%, depending on which studies that you are looking at. Observational studies, of course, are different than randomized control trials. And if you equate that with the time in range, then you can get a time in range improvement between anywhere between 5% to about 10%. And that improvement in time in range depends on the baseline time in range in A1C, of course, right? We have not seen so far increase in risk of severe hypoglycemia in those observational studies or randomized control trial. So Adjust T1D was a 6-month randomized control trial with a sufficient sample size to answer at least the power to look at the change in time in range, time below range, and the weight loss. We didn't see that increase in time below range. So I think I can fairly confidently say here that I'm overly optimistic that these molecules are not increasing severe hypoglycemia. DKA, now we need a long-term trial to really say that these molecules are safe in terms of the DKA risk. So we have registry trials going on. The Eli Lilly is doing, it's called Surpass T1D1 and Surpass T1D2. And they are sufficiently long duration with a large number of people. I think hopefully that will answer whether the DKA risk is higher. But so far, we haven't seen that in observational studies at this moment. But the key here that I want everybody to be aware of is that insulin titration is the key, making sure that these people are being titrated or down titrated with insulin appropriately, not to have an excessive hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, right? So if you do not down titrate the insulin by about 20 to 30%, even with the lowest dose of semaglutide or tirzepatide, it's quite possible that someone can have a hypoglycemia. And if you down titrate too much, then they can have a hyperglycemia, right? So the key is to have an adequate insulin titration when we use GLP-1 analog. In terms of the GI side effects, I think it's a pretty similar as we see in people with type 2 diabetes, with one difference is that I think in people with type 1 diabetes, what we observe clinically that they cannot tolerate the highest dose that has been studied in people with type 2 and the obesity. So somehow that using a lower dose and using all these tools that we are now knowing about how to mitigate the GI side effects are going to remain the same in type 1 diabetes. A perfect segue of our previous discussion is that the insulin adjustment is the key. So what we have learned from those observational studies and randomized controlled trial, and has been very consistent between randomized controlled trial and observational studies, both between semaglutide and tirzepatide studies, is that even with the lowest dose, so 0.25 milligram of semaglutide or 2.5 milligram of tirzepatide, most people require about 20 to 30% less insulin. However, you want to reduce that amount of the insulin in someone who have an A1C of about, let's say, 7.5% or lower. Other way around, if you're starting a GLP-1 with someone who have an A1C of about, let's say, 8.5% or 9%, you don't want to down titrate the insulin because you want to have that effect to reduce that A1C, right? So insulin reduction depends on multiple things, how insulin sensitive these people are, what's the baseline time in range or A1C is. And you go from that, and then you do require a frequent adjustment. So I would highly encourage the clinicians to follow up these individuals within a week or two, and then monthly to make sure that the insulin adjustment is done appropriately to have more benefit and less risk in terms of those hypo and hyperglycemia. I think the obesity is obesity and it should be treated equally, whether it's a type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes, but that's my personal opinion. There are a few differences between that type 2 and type 1, of course, but overall principle remains the same. Overall benefit should be same. Not that we have tested, but that's my assumption. Um, is that space has been slow? The answer is definitely yes. Makes sense that I think the type 2 diabetes and obesity market is much larger than type 1 diabetes market. But through your platform, I want to say that all industry, I want them not to ignore type 1 space and do something more so that we can utilize those drugs safely in people with type 1 diabetes as well.